sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
And a pleasant good evening to you and yours, and welcome into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on this Tuesday, the 19th day of June, 2018. Along with Phil Kornbluth, Professor Tom Hayes, yours truly, Will Pelagic, here with you. As we continue through our summer swing, we're going to talk a little bit about one of South Carolina's upcoming opponents that they don't usually get to see, the Ole Miss Rebels. Neil McCready will join us from rebelgrove.com in our second hour. We're also going to talk to Tommy Spangler from the South Carolina Athletic Hall of Fame and looking at towards the future for that.
No. Presbyterian.
Oh, I'm Presbyterian. I'm sorry.
Yeah. See the shirt?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I see that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you said we were going to talk to somebody from South Carolina Athletic Hall of Fame.
I was. You got the names confused.
Yes.
No, we were efforting for that, but Ephraim is out of town.
Ephraim is out of town. Okay.
Yeah. So we'll get him next week.
Am I suggesting you're trying to do a little mustache trade-off here with me with the little mustache situation?
Well, I'm just playing around with a few things here. Never hurts to work on the looks. And
Lord knows you're still trying.
Well, I mean, it's in the early stages. I'm going for if you want to know, if you can't tell, I'm going for the Fu Manchu look.
You don't have much of a Manchu. You're more just the Fu.
What's coming?
You're getting
it's early. I'm going for the Brian Leonard look.
My apologies. Tommy Spangler, head coach of Presbyterian, will join us coming up at 7:30 later on in the program. You can join us anytime, 800-956-7266. That's how you get in touch with us. Email talkback@sportstalksc.com, on Twitter @SportsTalkSC, where you can also get us via Periscope, also on TuneIn Radio. Some bowl projections to go over. Athlon Sports has released its All-America teams, and we got people who are kind of balking from Mark Kingston. It was kind of a little bit of a throwaway comment there at the end about the neutral site series with Clemson, about whether or not it will go back to Greenville. And it's something we've talked about, knowing with full knowledge that this was the last year of that agreement. And we've continued to get all the suggestions that we've been efforting from people across since that point in time. People are saying alternate home series. People are saying go to Charlotte. One guy says Joe Rowley Park. Spirit Communications is one that was brought up. Another person obviously talked about North Augusta. It just seems that there continues to be a clamoring for where that game is going to be played, not just from a provincial standpoint, from where people are in the state to be able to get to it, but of course talking about the advantage or disadvantage of playing it in Greenville.
Well, I hate when you mess with something because of money. You got a good thing going. Greenville is really a good location. It's a perfect neutral site. Both teams play other games there throughout the season. It sets up well for the travel purposes, and they sell it out every year. And the fanfare and the street party and all that stuff goes across very well. I'm not saying that any of these other locales can't do it. They took it down to Charleston once before, and they did a fine job as well. But why do you want to mess with something that already is working well for you, for the simple reason that maybe you're going to make an extra how much more can you make? Another $5,000, $10,000 out of it?
Same reasons that toddlers stack blocks up and then knock them down and do it again.
Yeah.
Just like to make changes.
Messing with a good thing isn't always a good idea.
Though, again, there is something to be said from folks who say that there is a decided advantage for Clemson people to be able to go up there. I know that the ticket distribution is somewhat even, and because of the way the programs were coming into the year, at least the standing, there was probably a lot more orange there than there was garnet than there has been in recent memory. There is the novelty of the North Augusta situation because it's a new ballpark. I don't like the Charlotte option. I don't think Spirit Communications is an ideal situation. And Charleston, you would have to do it. You would have to rearrange the series in my mind. You have to play the first game in Charleston, in my mind, play the second game in Columbia, and then the third game in Clemson. I don't think they want to do that.
Or you could go Clemson, Columbia, Charleston if you wanted to.
Yes.
I mean, but it makes sense to play the neutral game
in the middle. On Saturday.
Again, why do you want to mess with the best college baseball weekend rivalry series that there is? And just for the sake of chasing the dollars, usually when you chase dollars, it turns out to be a bust. So my vote is to leave it right where it is, leave a good thing alone, and enjoy what you've got.
Plus, the one thing, too, about this rivalry that I think distinguishes it from the other in-state rivalries is you have fan bases that are willing to travel for the game. That's, I think, the thing that is – you talked about this going into it before my first exposure to it. You see people who make the whole weekend out of it, who will be at the first game wherever it is, and then kind of follow it like a traveling circus around the state. I mean, there are people who are willing, and it happens at the time of the year. People are willing to turn that into a weekend.
Well, I'm the one that if I want to satisfy anybody just dancing around the middle, I don't see why. Maybe 2 out of every 3 years you're in Greenville, and 1 year you're in North Augusta. If you're thinking about travel and distance and all of that, Myrtle Beach is out of the equation.
No, it's not going to happen.
And Charleston, only because of the significance of the city, I would even venture to think about Charleston. But in my mind, if you're looking for a territory in between, Charleston is out of the equation.
Of course, we're looking at the College World Series. Rain and lightning kind of precluded things from staying on schedule last night. They had to play one of the games that was scheduled for last night earlier today, the winner's bracket game of Bracket 1. Mississippi State continuing to mess around, Corn. 12-2, they beat North Carolina, which sets up a loser's bracket game, and basically two schools who probably have reasons to root against both of them, North Carolina as well as Oregon State. That is the loser's bracket game coming up tomorrow night. Winner of that game will face Mississippi State for the right to go to the College World Series Finals. Right now, Florida has extended its lead on Texas in the top of the 8th. They lead 6-0. That is an elimination game. Loser is out. Winner will take on the loser of the winner's bracket game tonight between Arkansas and Texas Tech. But, Corn, like I said earlier, that North Carolina-Oregon State matchup, no really love lost for either of those two. No.
And, first of all, let's talk about Mississippi State.
Continue to mess around, man.
And what a charmed life they are leaving, though. There was no charm involved in this win because they pounded North Carolina earlier today.
That's just skill. That's not charm.
So they're just rolling through everybody. I say rolling. I mean, they had an unbelievable super regional series with Vanderbilt that could have gone either way. So Mississippi State playing for an interim coach who, I mean, if he wins the College World Series, don't they have to make him the permanent coach?
Yes. I think they have to make him that now. They should have done it already. I don't know what's taking so long.
My goodness. So you got Mississippi State sitting there in a position of power. Looks like Florida is going to survive and move on.
It's going to be a fun little matchup with those two.
Yeah. And then we got tonight's game. So, North Carolina, a little surprising that they got beat up the way they did because they've been going so well and their pitching had been so strong.
They brought gasoline out of the bullpen today. And if you're Oregon State, you think you staggered into the SEC tournament by mistake with all these SEC teams still alive. It's North Carolina's law of averages that's in their favor because, as I said before, Oregon State off the air, that Oregon State had swept North Carolina twice to win those 2 titles they have. So it's about time North Carolina beat Oregon State.
Mississippi State, and this just tells you what the regular season means to you. I mean, they were 15-15 in the regular season, the SEC. They were a 500 SEC team, only 10 games over 500. And, they just found the right time to play their best baseball. They just barely got into the tournament at 15-15, but they have found the right time to play their best baseball. And as you like to always say, and I don't disagree with you, a tournament is not about crowning the best team in the country. It's about the best team that's playing right then and there in that event.
Well, the thing, too, I think that stands out to me is that once again, the 3 teams from the SEC, presuming that Florida continues its run here and looks like they are going to take care of business against Texas, you could be getting to a situation where your Final Four, 3 of those Final 4 could be the teams out of the Southeastern Conference.
Somewhere Ray Tanner is smiling. Oh, no. I was out of the room when they were talking about SEC teams. Don't blame me that they make 3 out of the 4 into the finals. Had nothing to do with that. Does he have
to accuse himself on SEC teams at all? I don't think so.
No. Except his own.
That's the only one he has to.
So. Yeah.
We have one other baseball note that we want to pass along to you. We'll do that when we come back. We're going to look at Clemson and USC's recruiting boards coming up later on in the hour, and also the bowl projections based on Bovada's win total. Some interesting situations for where South Carolina might end up, and I have a particular theory on where Clemson might end up if things don't go as planned during the regular season. Sports Talk for a Tuesday on South Carolina Radio Network.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Hope you're enjoying yourself today. Now what? Now what?
Just looking at this little video clip of a brawl at a youth softball tournament between, of course, parents and fans of two North Carolina teams. No injuries or arrests. Both teams were disqualified from the tournament. Broke out between the parents and fans while kids are trying to play softball.
It's not good.
And I mean, this is I'm looking at the video. This is a major big time brawl.
Oh, it's a melee. I've seen the video. It's not good.
My goodness.
Must have been too much tailgating before the game.
We promised you one more baseball note. We'll give that to you here. And this could have some ripple effects here for not just one school in the state of South Carolina, but many, and that is College of Charleston assistant Jim Tillman, formerly a head coach elsewhere, according to Kendall Rogers and multiple others, is apparently moments away from accepting the head coaching job at Middle Tennessee State, with an announcement potentially coming within the next day. Our pal Teddy Hefner says, barring an unforeseen development, he will be the new baseball coach. There could be some also chatter involving one of South Carolina's assistants. Stuart Lake was announced by at least a couple of people who I saw that could possibly be on the move to College of Charleston to replace Tillman on Chad Holbrook's staff. But like you said, Corn, this could be something that has ripple effects for multiple programs here in the Palmetto State.
Well, good for Jim. And, he gets a chance to run a program and a bigger program than what he had at Liberty. I don't know about the history of Middle Tennessee State baseball.
It's better than Liberty, although Liberty probably has more money.
Yeah, Liberty under Jim did pretty well. They got to the tournament a couple of times. He came here to Columbia, beat Clemson twice, I remember, and they had a little bit of success. Of course, the Liberty program, if I'm not mistaken, was started by the former Gamecock assistant coach, and help me with the name, Pro. He was an assistant to Bobby Richardson, and then I think under June Raines, Johnny, come on, you know it, think.
Not Johnny. It wasn't Johnny Horton.
Liberty Baseball has 5 NCAA tournament appearances. Middle Tennessee has 13.
Look up the first head coach at Liberty, or one of the first. He was a former assistant here at South Carolina.
Hutton. Wasn't Hutton?
Johnny
Holmes?
Hutton. You're close. You're close. Anyway, that's great for Coach Toman, as we like to call him, the Tomaine poison. He'll bring a lot of fun to that crowd down there. And, if the Nashville media leaks over that way to cover Middle Tennessee baseball, they'll have a lot of fun with him. Man knows baseball. And he'll probably, I'm not exactly sure of his age, but his son, Charlie, from what I've seen, is an up-and-coming prospect, I think, as a left-handed pitcher. He's kind of getting of that age where people are starting to take notice of him. That might be his first recruit when the time comes.
Could possibly be.
I think it is Johnny Hutton. I think it is Johnny Hutton.
So the South Point Casino in Las Vegas, as we start to rinse ourselves from baseball mode and look into football mode a little bit, they have posted their win totals, and SB Nation has kind of aggregated those win totals and turned them into their own set of bowl projections based on the win totals for all the teams in college football. No surprise, they have Clemson going to one of the college football playoff semifinals again. Their 11 wins would pit them, according to the projections, against Ohio State. Alabama and Washington would be the other semifinal in the Orange Bowl that would take place in Miami. South Carolina, they have pegged for 7 wins. I think we all could probably agree that is a low projection for them, but that would slot them in the Music City Bowl in Nashville. It would be a return trip to Nashville for them because they also play Vanderbilt this year. They would play Virginia Tech in that matchup out of the ACC. Thoughts, gentlemen?
Well, I think that'd be disappointing for South Carolina, to say the least, to not make it to a New Year's Day bowl game and not play in Florida again, or one of the Primo Bowl games. I think they've got much better expectations, much higher expectations. And I mean, for just giggles, I mean, I would take $100 if I had $100 and had access to do something with it, and I'd take that over on South Carolina. I think that's a very wise investment as we sit here today. There's no way that this South Carolina team wins fewer than 8 games.
Well,
way.
Yeah,
mark it down.
One of the things I'm seeing
ain't going to happen
from the national standpoint, and I said the further you away from a team, the more oversimplification comes in. A person, say from Nebraska or California, looks at it. Let's see here. South Carolina loses Sky Moore, and they lose 3/4 of their secondary. So they write things like, hey, this will be a surprise season for South Carolina. Will Muschamp's offense may be better than his defense. They haven't looked at the depth that Muschamp has built up on defense over the years, and I think their secondary has a chance to actually be better than it was last year.
Well, the thing that surprises me is that South Carolina has been an en vogue pick as the #1 contender to Georgia for the East. I don't know how, Corn, that translates to only 7 wins.
Right.
Especially when you get Georgia at home and your toughest road trips are to Nashville and Gainesville. And I would think you could at least win one of those 2, if not both.
Absolutely. I think that's just selling the Gamecocks terribly short. And I think,
conference, I should say, aside from the Clemson game.
Yeah, exactly. So I think people aren't giving South Carolina their due, and they're not paying attention really close if that's what you think. I mean, you look at the schedule, and they stand an excellent chance, I believe, at starting the season no worse than 5-1. And you know what? I'm even throwing it out there with Georgia being at home, road games at Vandy and Kentucky, which are always winnable if you play decent football and don't give it away to them. And then a home game with Missouri, and of course, Coastal to open up, and Marshall in there at home. Those are 6 possible wins. I would not dare say that South Carolina can't win all 6 of those games. At the most conservative I would be a 5-1 start for them.
Well, what prognosticators do when they look at football, especially college football, they look at scores. And what they see as a negative, I see as a positive. Since Will Muschamp has been here, South Carolina has pulled out a lot of close games. That's all to the good.
Well, they've lost a lot of close games too. Most of their losses, except for the 2 Clemson games, their losses have been within 10 points.
Yeah, but they've
been in every game except those 2.
They've had success in winning those close games. And Muschamp has a tremendous record when you put Florida and South Carolina together of winning games when his offense even scores only 17 points. Well, I think he's got like an 800 winning percentage.
Well, the Kentucky thing, like I've said before, has to happen this year. Like, it just has to. Like, the game last year, they should have won. Let's put that away and done. That should have been a win for you.
But they had some things happen.
They had some things happen. The Deebo Samuel injury, they were not able to adjust to that mid-game. Right. They couldn't stop the run. That needs to happen. It just has to. Like, I have no other way of saying it other than you have to beat Kentucky, or else, in my mind, you're a joke. Like, you can't keep losing to Kentucky. It just can't happen.
But then again, if you look at Kentucky, it seems that Kentucky, that's their championship game. Because all the years that Kentucky beat South Carolina, they didn't take the gas at the end of the season.
Right. Kentucky has found something in matchups with South Carolina's defense during this winning streak for them to run the football.
Right.
184 yards rushing last year. The Gamecocks had only 54 yards rushing.
And they can't pass it. They just
against
can't.
Kentucky.
They're a one-dimensional offense, and it's 3-4 yards a carry.
They've run the Wildcat. They've had somebody in there to run the Wildcat 2 years ago in a Kentucky win. Kentucky rushed for 216 yards, and the Gamecocks had 91. So, just looking back here, you see what the recipe is for Kentucky. Run the ball and stop the run. That's why they've been able to beat South Carolina. Go back 3 years when they won, and they rushed the ball for 207 yards. Now, USC rushed for 195. They lost by 4 in that game and had a chance to win. I think a late interception killed their chances in that game.
And that's what killed South Carolina. Also, turnovers against Kentucky, especially at Commonwealth Stadium.
I have a theory on the other team in the Palmetto State, and I don't know if it's going to make anybody very happy. Just saying.
Probably not.
Probably might not make you very happy.
But it makes you happy to make other people
unless you're projecting them winning the national championship. It's not going to make anybody in orange happy.
Well, they put you this way. it has to do with their margin for error, and I'll explain that when we come back here on Sports Talk. Six-1 now in the eighth inning in favor of Florida. Elimination game of the College World Series. We'll keep you updated as we go throughout the program. A half hour from now, we're going to talk to RebelGrove.com's Neil McCready, the Ole Miss Rivals.com site. Tommy Spangler, head coach of Presbyterian College, will join us an hour from now. You can join us whenever you'd like, 800-956-7266. Also, tweet us at SportsTalkSC. So I teased this, guys, and This was something I thought of just organically, and only because I'm number one, a conspiracy theorist, and number two, somebody who thinks that somebody is always in line to get jobbed. And I think, unfortunately, the time could be prime for Clemson to get jobbed because of a down ACC, what I would consider to be softer than Charmin's schedule, and also the eyesore of a performance that they had in the semifinal game last year against Alabama. And the only thing that makes me think about this is the fact that Ohio State, despite the fact that they had 2 losses last year, they did win themselves the Big Ten championship game. So that obviously was a feather in their cap for folks in the committee. But they were similarly, I would say, slandered by the committee because of the fact that they had their regular season losses and they were playing in a conference in a Big Ten that basically got disrespected by the committee. And I think the ACC didn't exactly take any positive strides last year. And I think if Clemson, unless they run the table convincingly, I find it very, very hard for them to have the kind of margin of error they've had the last 2 years where they can afford a regular season loss and still get a favorable look from the committee.
I don't disagree with you about the league looking ahead just based on what's coming back. Teams took big hits in both divisions with the exception of Clemson, with those defensive guys coming back, with the quarterback situation coming back like it is, the running backs. I mean, Clemson, of course, is loaded. I'm going to tell you who to watch in the Atlantic Division as an up-and-comer besides Florida State.
That's the only team.
I still think Florida State with Francois, a healthy Francois, the other talent that they have on offense. It's not like Jimbo didn't recruit talent while he was there towards the end.
Right.
Their running backs are very good. So you cannot discount Florida State,
and
you have to play
too.
down there.
Yeah.
But Boston College impressed me. Their young quarterback was very, very good, and their running backs were they had a pretty good offensive attack going on there, and they've always been, even in their lean years when they were losing a lot of games, they were playing good defense. Look for Boston College, I would say, in the Atlantic to maybe be that third team in there. Looks like Miami and Virginia Tech are the cream of the crop in the Coastal. We'll see if North Carolina can. They can't be as bad as they were last year. I mean, they're going to bounce back, but Virginia Tech got some news today that their quarterback, whatever academic issue he was having, apparently was cleared up in his favor.
Remember, the Boston College game was a 7-7 game going to the fourth quarter in Death Valley.
So with Josh Jackson back at Virginia Tech at quarterback, that's a bonus for them. And they were a 9-win team last year, 5 wins in the league. So, you know,
in the weaker division.
But still, I don't disagree with you. Here's a question I want to throw out there because the projection by this outfit we're talking about,
South Point Casino, Las Vegas.
Yeah, and the Final Four, you know, you got Clemson, you got Alabama, you got Washington, and you got Ohio State.
Sir.
And so the question is, are people – I know the fans of those teams aren't going to be fatigued, but what about the rest of the country? It's like, okay, how many times do we have to see the same 4 teams? Now, it's up to other teams to rise up and derail that. But, I mean, has the power in college football shifted so much to where it sits firmly in the laps of maybe 5 or 6 teams?
Yes.
Here's the deal. As you said, Clemson got a get out of jail free card for losing to Syracuse.
Mulligan, if you will.
This year, a coach is well respected who's got a chance to use his get out of jail free card, and that's Chris Peterson of Washington.
True.
Washington stumbles in the Pac-12. They'll get a break from the committee this year because they're not only suffering from Clemson and Alabama and Ohio State fatigue, they're suffering from a lack of Pac-12 exposure teams in there. So I think if anybody gets a break this year, it'll be Washington.
Is the other part of this that you have to remember. And again, I know you hate when I bring this part up. This is, at the end of the day, a television show. And these are television show games. And far be it for me to sound cynical about it, but do they really want to see another blowout? Whether it's Clemson, whether it's Washington, whether it's Ohio State. I mean, do they want to see one of these two end up as a blowout? I mean, by and large, these games, these semifinal games, aside from the Rose Bowl last year, which was an amazing game, most of these semifinal games have been duds. And the only national championship games that weren't duds were the last 2.
Yeah, the last two certainly were not.
The last two were great.
Even Clemson's loss to Alabama went to the fourth quarter.
It did,
Yeah.
but
it didn't just go to the last play.
Right.
Like these last two you can't beat the drama of the last two.
No, that's fine.
I'm not saying the question is nationally, or are people who aren't emotionally tied to these 4 or 5 teams that always now are coming up in the projections for the semifinals, are people getting tired of it? Do they want to see? Do they want to see some fresh blood in there? But maybe it's never going to happen with this setup, because it's set up to where, in college football, the strong get stronger through recruiting and excellent coaching and financial support, and they stay there. They stay at the top. And if you're in a weak league like Clemson is, and you're in a situation where Alabama is, where even, they can sustain a loss and still come back and win their division, win the SEC championship, and get in the playoff, or maybe even not even get to the SEC championship game and still get in the playoff. We've seen that happen before for teams.
Saw that last year.
Yeah, so you're exactly right. So, are people growing tired of that? Do they want to see something? Do you want to see somebody else? Well, it's up to the other. It's up to the other teams to pull themselves up by the bootstraps and get there.
Unless you look at the storylines, because as I said before, in my mind, during this run that Alabama has, nobody can really argue with me that Alabama had the better quarterback, but they had the better lines of scrimmage. Now, the other deal is this: who in the world thought Alabama would stagger into the playoffs? And you get a true freshman throwing a touchdown pass to another true freshman and they win. Either you're going, we can't beat these guys. They're putting in guys that don't even shave yet and they're beating people. And so you look at, Nick Saban, but Nick Saban is a gambler. He's got a guy that just got hit for a 15, 20-yard loss, and then he goes for all the marbles on the next play.
I don't know how you fix it without expansion. But I also don't know what problem that solves, because you're still going to have the rich getting richer. You're just going to have more seats at the table. I don't know if that fixes the lack of parity we have in college football.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, who's to say we're not going to end up with the same 2 in the final that you would have anyway if you had 4? That's the problem that they have right now.
Well, I mean, look, the committee, if it can be brave, can change some of that. If a team doesn't win its division, it shouldn't be in the national playoffs, period. But they can't pull them,
Which would eliminate
Alabama.
Exactly.
Alabama would like a word with that.
Well, I'm sure they would. But, I mean, if you can't win your own division, then you should stay home.
I don't know if any of those guys
and,
are
of course, the argument is, well, we're trying to put together the 4 best teams. But, see, this goes back to arguments we've had for many, many years. For those who were in favor of this, this was supposed to eliminate the subjectivity of selecting teams to play for the national championship, but it hasn't. There's still a lot of subjectivity that goes into it. A lot of opinion comes into play.
The problem, I think, it was actually supposed to add subjectivity in my mind, because I think the biggest problem people had was that you were so self-reliant on the computer rankings, which people's biggest complaint was those didn't tell the whole story. I think that the subjectivity of having humans on that committee, I think, is something that was graciously wanted by the fans of college football.
I thought the idea was you have conference champions, who automatically get into their championship games, and then the winner there is considered for the national tournament. But now we're seeing where even if you win your championship of your league, a team that didn't play for it is selected ahead of you. And that's where the subjectivity comes into
the criteria is inconsistent.
Because they didn't pass the eye test. That's the subjectivity. Yeah.
But that was supposed to be eliminated when this was all discussed.
Continue to bat this around when we come back on Sports Talk.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Welcome back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Florida one defensive out away from advancing past their elimination game with Texas. Win today, and they live to play 2 days from now against the loser of Arkansas and Texas Tech. That game takes place tonight at 7. Arkansas or Texas Tech, if they win, would move to the potential semifinal game. They would play that game on the 22nd later on this week. So we'll keep you updated on what's going on there. Again, tonight it is North Carolina, Oregon State tonight is Arkansas, Texas Tech. That was supposed to start at 7 o'clock Eastern time. There'll certainly be a little bit of delay because this Florida-Texas game has run long. I wanted to go back to what we were talking about because with regards to the College Football Playoff Committee, and I think we were all kind of dancing around different theories on why they started this. The biggest thing was they wanted more than one matchup. They wanted more than just the 1 versus 2 matchup. And they figured that you needed a committee to make that happen. I know you said that you wanted to take out some of the subjectivity, but in my mind, I think they wanted to add the subjectivity. In your mind, have we accomplished everything we wanted to get out of this committee now that we have a larger sample size to kind of go off of?
Well, I think that, I thought by and large the old BCS formula worked pretty well. At the end of the day, except for a few exceptions, I'm not going to say every year they got it right, but I think
we're great from the standpoint of the fact that it put the best teams in the discussion, but I don't like the fact that it only give us one game.
Yeah, I think by and large they got the 2 best teams in the country together, with an exception here or there. They had their little screw-ups, it would appear, and had some teams in there that maybe shouldn't have gotten in there. Yeah, for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. But I think by and large they have gotten the 2 best teams together. Now they've given us – look, I think the semifinal day of the college football playoff is a great sports day.
Yes.
I mean, it's highly anticipated. It's an all-day party. And it's what college football fans yearned for, and I think it's delivered from that standpoint. As you pointed out, the games, by and large, have not been all that competitive, kind of drama-free for the most part in the semifinal games, but that can't be predicted. You don't know when they get out there what you're going to get. It's like a NASCAR race. Sometimes you're going to get a down-to-the-wire finish, and sometimes you're going to get a guy winning by, a half a lap. You just don't know what you're going to get. So, has it gotten us to 2 best teams? I mean, it's a roll of the dice when you're playing semifinals that the quote unquote 2 best teams are going to make it, but that's what you get when you have a tournament. Mm-hmm. If you're only going to play one game for the national championship, and you, as a committee of 12 or 13, whatever the BCS used to have, is going to sit there and say, you're the best team A, you're the best team B, we concur, that's it, then you're more often than not going to get the 2 best teams. You run the risk of the best team of the 4 being upset in the semifinals, and thus you're not going to get that in the championship.
But here's the point I want to make, and this is the unspoken thing for people outside of our region. They wanted to find a way also to edit out the SEC. They went in too many championships in a row. Let's get a formula to get some other teams in here, and they still can't get rid of the SEC, especially Alabama, from winning the title after title. It's just difficult.
To the point that I put back, and you alluded to this, 2 of the 8 semifinal games that we've had, this has been in existence since 2014-15. 2 of the 8 semifinal games have been 1-score games. Last year's Rose Bowl between Georgia and Oklahoma, and the Ohio State-Alabama Sugar Bowl in the first year of the playoff, where Ohio State beat Alabama 42-35. 3 of the 4 championship games have been 1-score games, including the first Alabama-Clemson matchup 2 years ago when Clemson won the championship on the final play, and the overtime over Alabama, or the overtime Alabama and Georgia of a year ago.
On Twitter, Lawrence writes at us, Corn, Ohio State lost 2 games to Iowa, 55-31, and they got punked at home by Oklahoma. They had no case despite a conference title. Get it together and stop the BS. I think that's what we're saying here, is that subjectivity came into play when it shouldn't have. That's the argument that I was making, Lawrence, that you've got more subjectivity, as much, if not more, under the current process in which you had before under the BCS. Yeah, you could make a very strong argument that Ohio State should not have been in the Final Four despite winning the Big Ten championship game because of what happened to them in the regular season, especially that embarrassing loss to Iowa and getting hammered by Oklahoma.
But does that excuse Alabama from making the tournament because of the fact that they did not win their conference division?
Yeah, again, subjectivity. And I'm telling you, the argument presented by those in support of a playoff, of an expanded playoff, was that it was going to eliminate this kind of conversation, and we would have the 4 clear-cut best teams in the country playing in the semifinals.
And not only did Alabama get into the Final Four, but Alabama got an extra week of rest because they didn't have to play in the SEC championship.
Exactly.
game.
So you're right. The inconsistencies, that's one thing about everything in college sports. The inconsistencies are consistent.
I'm still struggling with your statement about that it was supposed to eliminate subjectivity. I don't know how humans eliminate subjectivity. I think computers are what eliminate subjectivity.
Well, if I remember correctly, going back to the BCS days, you had a committee of how many people? Wasn't it about 10 or 12 people? Pretty large committee, and they relied heavily on the computer inputs.
Well, I think they had a committee, but again, it was a lot. It went down to the voters. It went down to the pollsters. It was the Harris poll voters, and after a while, it was the coaches poll and the AP poll. It was different.
I think it was the subjectivity of the poll voting.
Yes,
influencing the computer spit out and the teams that were ranked at the top of the BCS rankings at the end of the day.
The biggest computer spit out point, though, was the strength of schedule numbers, which I think is something that probably this committee relies on a lot, but I don't know if they rely on it as much as they should.
Well, it's not only that. It becomes what? Your opponent's strength, and then the strength of schedule of your opponent's opponents, their win-loss record.
Well, you also have to get a little lucky sometimes. Sometimes you get unlucky with scheduling people who you think are going to be good. Or, like, for example, Alabama scheduling Florida State. Well, thought Florida State was going to be good, and then ended up not being as impressive as a victory for a lot of people because Florida State floundered.
The point here at the end of the conversation, which we need to get to, the point is that there is no consensus on how to get the best 2 teams together if you're just picking 2. And now there's no consensus on how to get the 4 best teams together, despite everything that you tried to do.
Because you got to remember, the people who are feeding the information in the computer are human.
Recruiting.
You put me up against the wall with the most important aspect of the day.
It's okay.
We'll give it to you in fine fashion. So, 2020 quarterback DJ Uiagalelei. Got the last part wrong. Uiagalelei, 6'5", 235, 2020 quarterback. Bellflower, California, was at Clemson last week. Highly recruited and offers from all across the country. Really liked his visit to Clemson. Has watched them a lot on television. And, of course, impressed by what he saw in person. Liked what he heard from Dabo Swinney and the other coaches about him and their offense and how he would fit in. He also visited Georgia and Alabama while he was in the Deep South. He's got offers from almost all the major programs in the country. But he said this was his best visit. And he just loved everything about Clemson. And so Clemson's going to be a major factor with him moving forward. And he last season passed for 2,733 yards and 29 touchdowns. Offensive lineman Ja'Kai Moore of Nokesville, Virginia, trimmed his list to 7. USC, Clemson, Virginia Tech, Penn State, Ohio State, Miami, and North Carolina. He was at USC and Clemson last week. Clemson for an unofficial, and USC he worked out in a camp. He's had a longer relationship with the Gamecocks, and they stay in regular touch, as does Clemson's Robbie Caldwell. Today, he visited Penn State. He plans to get to all the schools on his short list before making his decision. Place kicker Jonathan Whites of Porter Gaud committed to Clemson as a preferred walk-on for 2019. Got a couple of more notes when we come back.
2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Welcome back, Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. Hour 2 of our radio program here with you. Will Pelagic, Phil Kornbluth, Professor Tom Hayes. You can find us not only on our 29 terrestrial radio stations across the Palmetto State, but also at TuneIn Radio. We encourage you to go to our flagship station in Columbia, 100.7 The Point, as we get you with that and find that for that particular station there, and you can get to us. They'd never preempt this, and also our Periscope site as well at SportsTalkSC on Twitter and Periscope. Let's now continue our look at the 2018 football season. We've been going around the Clemson and South Carolina opponents. This is one of these opponents that South Carolina doesn't get to see very often, one of the rotating cross-divisional opponents. It's our chance to look at the Mississippi Rebels. Ole Miss 6-6 a year ago. First year under Matt Luke as the interim head coach. He has had the interim tag removed, and now it is our pleasure to be joined by Neil McCready, RebelGrove.com, the Rivals.com site which covers Ole Miss. Neil, I guess the reviews were in. He was, I guess, someone who could use that cool hand to kind of temper the waters, so to speak.
Yeah, I think it was a stability thing as much as anything else. I'll be honest. I was surprised. I woke up the day after their win over Mississippi State, and we were full bore on a coaching search. Our information told us that it was not going to be Matt Luke. That changed sometime late that Friday, early that Saturday. It's my very educated opinion that Ole Miss intended to hire Dave Doran at NC State, and that Dave Doran intended to take the job. And now I know that everyone does the dance now where they deny all of those things, but that's sourced pretty well. So something happened to change that. And, since then, Matt's done a good job. He's like I said, he stabilized a program that needed to be stabilized. They've got the bowl ban this year, but in terms of recruiting going forward, they're kind of through that now. It's a 6-year saga that basically is over. And, he's got a lot of Ole Miss ties and all of that stuff. If you're into that kind of thing and you think that kind of thing matters, personally, I don't. But I thought he did a good job last year. I thought the kids believed in him. I thought they were tired of Hugh Freeze. I thought they were tired of some of the act and some of the corniness that came with Freeze. Luke's a far more kind of button down, blue collar sort of guy. And I think the kids appreciated that last year. Now going forward, he's got a different job in front of him, because you can only play that us against the world so often. And he played that pretty hard last year, and I don't blame him. That would have been the card I would have played too, but I don't know that he could play that going forward. Now you've got to put your stamp on a program and build it going forward, and it'll be interesting to see how he does that.
Absolutely. This is a program, anytime you go through an NCAA investigation, a scandal, things with your head coach, probation, your program is in the dark, but now, you're starting to climb out of that, and the fans want to see a team that will be in the years to come back in the hunt for an SEC West title and getting into the championship game and beyond. Did the fan base hold together from where you sit in terms of their support? Were they fractured? If so, have they come back together?
Yes, they were fractured. They still are fractured. It was. I don't know if you guys saw it. There's in this business and in sports, there's always recency bias. You're always the last game's the one that everybody always talks about. For Ole Miss, that was a win over Mississippi State, where I don't think anybody thought they were going to win the game. Mm-hmm. So there was a very positive ending. If you just go back 5 nights earlier, Ole Miss lost at home to Texas A&M in a stadium that was about half full and had zero energy in the building. I think a lot of people wanted to see a change, a new face. I think they did not want to see a continuation of the Hugh Freeze era. And fairly or not, they viewed Matt Luke as sort of a continuation of the Freeze era, since he was on Freeze's staff the entire time as his offensive line coach. So it's still pretty fractured. Their season ticket sales are down. There's not a lot of energy around the program. They're trying to generate some of that. It's difficult to do, as you guys know, and it's going to be a long road. You talk about championships and stuff like that. Man, they're light years from that kind of thing right now. that's not a realistic goal. I think for this season, what's a realistic goal is to play hard, to have some consistency, to win the games you're supposed to win, to have effort, to recruit well. There's going to be a little bit of a fall off just by numbers in 2019 and maybe into 2020. This is going to be a tough patch for that program, and keeping the fan base together and energized and that kind of thing is going to be a challenge. That's just the way it is.
What is the scholarship number for the team for this season?
They're up in the upper 70s, low 80s. They're fine. I mean, they really, it's funny when the penalty came down, the initial reaction in the national media was, "Oh God, 2-year bowl ban." I looked at the scholarship numbers and I said they got exactly what they proposed, and they already sort of incurred some of those. They'd already self-inflicted some of those, so it really wasn't a big hit from a scholarship standpoint. The 2nd-year bowl ban, I mean, look, maybe they're going to lose a trip to the Texas Bowl or the Music City Bowl. They weren't going to the Sugar Bowl this year. I mean, that wasn't where they were headed. They weren't headed to the Outback Bowl or the Capital One or something like that. I mean, we're talking Independence, Birmingham, Music City, if it all works out. So is that a blow? I guess.
The Outback Bowl is a sore subject around these parts. For
only to you. I love going to Tampa.
Apparently,
as I said those words, I realized that probably for this audience that probably didn't resonate exactly the way that it would here. But
yeah,
I don't know. From a scholarship standpoint, they're okay. What it did, and you guys, with NCAA stuff, where it hurts you is it hangs over you all of those years of your program, and it kills you on the recruiting trail. And there are gaps on that roster that were created in large part because of the NCAA thing that are going to come to roost in the next year or two.
Well, I'll be the guinea pig. The quarterback, Jordan Tiamu. Shea Patterson is gone, and I know there's some fans at Ole Miss upset that they just turned him loose and let him go up to Ann Arbor. But this guy's got quite an arm, and Ole Miss still has a bevy of receivers. Is this team still going to be fun to watch? I mean, every time I turned on Ole Miss, they were going deep. Are they going to do the same thing this year?
Yeah, I'm in the minority on this one, guys. I thought Shea Patterson was overrated, and that kind of said as much from the beginning. It's one of the reasons his father went after me on social media last season, long before the transfer stuff came. Shea is an athletic kid. He's got a good arm. He's got a lot of charisma. Shea's problem is that when the pocket collapses, it is over, man. If the first guy's covered, he's cutting loose. He's wanting to use his feet, and that doesn't work in this league. Tamu came in, and while he probably is not quite as physically gifted as Patterson, he's a better fit for that offense. He can throw the deep ball. He can make all the intermediate routes. They're very good at receiver. A.J. Brown's a first-round pick. DK Metcalf has a chance to be a first-round pick. They're solid receiver. They've got a very good offensive line. They've got a left tackle that's a first-round pick in Greg Little. Whether they have a running back or not is a question that will have to be answered. But, yeah, they'll be fun to watch offensively. I mean, they're going to air it out, and I think they're going to play from behind a lot. They're going to throw the football a lot. Defensively, there are question marks everywhere. But I agree with you. Jordan Tamu's a really good quarterback. If you told me that Jordan Tamu gets an opportunity in the NFL, and make sure I'm clear on that. I'm not saying he's the next Tom Brady, but if you told me that he gets an opportunity in an NFL camp, a legitimate one, to prove himself one day, I'm not remotely surprised. There's a lot there in terms of the toolbox with that kid.
Real quick, I got about 30 seconds, Neil. Your win total ceiling, and do you give him a puncher's chance against South Carolina?
Ceiling is probably 7 wins. That's if everything goes well. The floor is probably 5. So they're probably right in that range. A puncher's chance? Yeah, a puncher's chance, but Carolina will really have to help them.
Neil McCready, rebelgrove.com, does amazing work. We'll talk to you closer to the season, and I'm looking forward to going back to the Grove. It's one of my favorite college football trips that is out there, and you guys know how to do it right there in Oxford, Mississippi.
Just let me know. I'll visit with you anytime.
Thanks, Neil. Neil McCready joins us here.
So he seemed to think that USC game kind of a swing game for Ole Miss to get to the 7 wins.
Could be. We'll review it when we come back, and more recruiting when we return.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Do you want to just share with the class what you just read?
Yeah, I just saw something here, a comment attributed to the voice of Clemson football and baseball, and I guess basketball, Don Munson, that I'm trying to pull up the quote here. Of course, now this isn't good. Let me see if they got this right. See, he must have been on a radio station for an interview in Atlanta, 92.9 The Game, home of the Hawks. And the headline is Voice of Clemson, Dan Munson.
Oof.
Wasn't he once the football coach at Idaho and out there in the West? Dan Munson?
That
was Don Munson.
Don Munson. He's now.
So anyway,
he's now at Cal State somewhere.
You could call me Ray.
Would help to get the name right, but anyway, I'm trying to pull this up here.
Yeah, he used to be the coach of Gonzaga and then went to Minnesota and
it says Dan Munson. This is Midday with Rick and John. Today, Dan Munson previews the 2018 football season. I guess you have to download it, but I saw somebody who must have listened to it, and they wrote, I'm taking them at their word, that more than likely Kelly Bryant will start every game at quarterback for Clemson this year, barring injury.
Barring injury.
Well,
or barring Dabo's interpretation.
First of all, nobody can predict what's going to happen. Yeah. But let's just say injuries aside, there are no injuries. Injuries are not a part of the equation. Let's say everybody stays healthy. I mean, Kelly's going to have the chance going in the fall camp to be the number one quarterback. If he goes into fall camp and plays at an extremely high level, as he did most of last year, then I would expect him to start against Furman. I would expect him to have an excellent game in the maybe quarter and a half, 2 quarters that he plays against Furman. And I would expect Trevor Lawrence and Chase Bryce to go in there and probably have some success as well. I apologize to the Paladins out there, but it is what it is. And I think you know it too. But then you go to Texas A&M, and then we'll see. That will be the real litmus test here early on. If Kelly goes out there and has a great game against Texas A&M and Clemson wins, then he might be right on the button with his projection.
I'm not saying this to say anything disrespectful to the teams that Clemson plays. I'd say they could probably win 11 of their 12 games with Chase Bryce. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they're not going to go that far. You got to have in today's game. You got to have excellent quarterback play. I'm not sure Chase Bryce,
and that's not a negative comment about Chase Bryce. Don't give me that garbage now.
Well, can we see this happen? Because you want to get all you can out of a player you think you're going to have only 3 years.
Right.
And can you see Clemson doing what Florida did years ago? Chris Leak starts the game. Certain times of the game, they put Tebow in.
I don't know if Dabo is going to have a Trevor Lawrence package. What I think that might actually happen, instead of getting Trevor Lawrence in what quote unquote garbage time, give him a series in the second quarter.
Oh no, I mean that's what they did with Tebow.
Right.
Yeah, they worked him in slowly, and then by the time Chris Leak was graduated, he came in and it was no sweat. He just.
But if you're Kelly Bryant, you have got to close off the noise from people like us and from the fans, because he's got to know that any mistake he makes, turnover, the fans are going to be howling for Trevor Lawrence to get in there. He's got to go play his game, try and play loose and relaxed and do what he does. I mean, that should be good enough with the schedule and with the team Clemson has around him, and with that outstanding defense, probably going to give them some excellent field position. If he comes out, if he emerges in the fall as the guy, he'll certainly have everything at his disposal to be able to stay there.
At the College World Series, it was Florida beating Texas by a score of 6-1. Texas now eliminated. Earlier today, it was Mississippi State beating North Carolina 12-2. North Carolina in a loser's bracket game with Oregon State that will take place tomorrow, as will the originally scheduled game for the night between Arkansas and Texas Tech. They were supposed to play the night at 7. That game has now been postponed because of impending bad weather. Impending bad weather, not actual bad weather.
Well, maybe in hindsight, if you're from another part of the country, you're glad that 3 of those super regionals were against SEC teams, because there might be a whole.
Tell you what,
Levy of
speaking
them.
from the media
It
standpoint, nobody feels sympathy for the media, and the media
Never.
doesn't ask for sympathy. But, you know, you get out there on the day before the press conference to
You
get
feel like
acclimated.
you feel like you're never going to leave there.
And then you have the next day, you have open practice for everybody in the press conferences, and you're just feeling great. This is fun. This is fun. Let's go have a steak. Let's go to Drover. Da, da, da. After about the third day,
You don't want to see red meat after that.
oh, and then, you know, you start running out of clothes and you've lost all your money in the casinos, and your boss is calling and saying, how much more are you going to spend?
You have to go to
And
Walmart. And
it's
buy
like,
a,
and then
buy a
everything
polo
gets
shirt.
delayed,
And then
and you're waiting. You know, I've been sitting in the stadium there with airline reservations ready to go. As soon as the last out is recorded, my finger about to hit the button, and it was either the Gamecocks or the Tigers. They came back and won a game, and you end up staying, you know,
Another
day.
and then you get tired.
I stayed there so long I was paying taxes.
You get
I got a tax bill.
you get tired and haggard. You can't think of things, and you lock your laptop in a laundry
You ever
bag.
hear this story?
No.
Oh,
Actually, no, I have heard this story. You went to go do laundry, and you had the
not only did I
laundromat.
go do laundry, I went to go do laundry in Iowa because you crossed the state line going back over to where the hotel was. And I walked out a laundromat and left all my stuff in there, going out to my car to get something, and didn't see the sign on the door that says,
Yes,
after
you have to heard this
9 o'clock, the door will automatically lock behind you. And I was the only one there. And so I had to chase down a cop at from the local town there. Anyway,
you have some leftover recruiting.
yeah, just a couple of quick notes that I wanted to finish up with recruiting, and then talk about a couple of things. Linebacker Trey Wilkins, remember our good buddy from Stone Mountain, Georgia,
How could I forget?
who declared a commitment to USC only to see Will Muschamp not accept it. He announced a commitment to Kentucky last night. I can only assume that one was accepted. I've seen no blow up on Twitter about that commitment.
Was that a committable offer?
I'm assuming that it is.
I didn't see a pause up.
He announced the commitment. Nobody has erupted in Lexington, Kentucky, that they don't want him, that he stinks, that he's not worthy of an offer. Sounds like it's a real deal.
He's a take, as it were.
Apparently. Clemson target linebacker Levanta Bentley of Birmingham was at Alabama yesterday. One-time USC target defensive lineman C.J. Clark of New London, North Carolina, committed to NC State. 2020 defensive back R.J. Mickens, Southlake, Texas, was at Clemson yesterday, son of former NFL standout Ray Mickens.
Yes.
Basketball, 2020 6'7" Silas Mason of Greensboro, North Carolina, was to take an unofficial visit to USC today, per Phenom Hoops report. USC target 2019 6'11" Brandon Stone took an official to LaSalle over the weekend. I keep calling him a USC target. I think he still is. I don't know for sure that the Gamecocks have stopped recruiting him. They were on him very hard early on, but I'm sensing maybe not a whole lot of activity recently. And according to a tweet by Get Me Recruited, the USC women over the weekend offered 8th grader 5'6" Lisa Thompson of Plainfield, Illinois. That is 8th grader as in going into the 9th grade. Just finished up the 8th grade,
So
going into the 9th grade.
That would make her the class of 2023.
Yes.
That would
class
also
of
make her
2023.
only, about 14 or 15 years old.
It's weird. We talk about recruiting from the standpoint of, it starts earlier and earlier and earlier. The non-revs are the ones that I think exploit the age thing probably a lot more than the football and the men's basketball. This is not an uncommon thing, offering 8th graders, and whether it's women's basketball or
football,
softball, soccer.
And basketball coaches don't get a pass when it comes. We've seen quarterbacks offered in the 8th and 9th grade out there. The whole thing is out of control. I'm not going to sit here and start a sermon about it right now, but I think if you listen here long enough, you've heard us say the whole thing is just crazy, out of control, and there's nothing in sight that indicates anybody cares to do anything about it. The NCAA keeps coming out with this rule, this change, that change, and they never address the elephant in the room directly, which is recruiting.
It's our chance to talk again once inside the state to review what's going on in spring. Look ahead to fall. Presbyterian College's Tommy Spangler joins us next when we return on Sports Talk. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. We're brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union. This is big. For a limited time, Founders Federal Credit Union's 5-year certificate is at its highest rate. Don't miss your chance. Visit foundersfcu.com or an office to apply for that rate. It's now time we are joined, Corn, by the head coach of the Blue Hose.
Absolutely. Coach Tommy Spangler joining us here on Sports Talk. We look back at the spring. We look ahead to the fall. Coach, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good, Phil. How are you doing?
We are great. Always great to have you with us. And I tell you what, how are you dealing with everything as Presbyterian is in that transition stage, moving from the Big South in a couple of years to the Pioneer League and kind of getting out of the scholarship deal with your football program? And you had small numbers in the spring. From a coaching standpoint, from your staff standpoint, how are you dealing with all that?
Well, it's really gone pretty good, Phil. Football is football. I mean, we're going to still line up. We're going to still try to block and tackle. We're going to still try to execute. You're right. There's been some things that have happened that aren't in our control as a coaching staff that we've got to move forward on. And, we had we didn't quite have the numbers that we normally have in the springtime. But I tell you what, the kids that have decided to stay, the kids that have decided to be here, the kids that obviously are going to join us in the fall, heck, I'm looking forward to it. And it was a good spring.
Can you, in your current state with your roster the way it is, and I know you signed, 5 boatloads of people back in February. I mean, a bunch of new guys coming in. Can you be competitive this year in the Big South?
That's our goal, Phil. I mean, obviously that's what we want to do. And, to me, when you got a chance, to me, you go into each and every game thinking, hey, we got a chance. We've kind of maneuvered our schedule a little bit. At one time we had Georgia Southern and Troy State. We got out of those games. We've added a couple other teams. Obviously, it's still a tough schedule. We've moved to 10 games rather than normal 11 or 12 that most people play, just because of the situation we're in, needing a little extra time to develop some young guys. I like what we've got coming back as far as some veteran guys. Obviously, we just don't have the depth that we normally would have. So that's gonna mean we're gonna have to count on some guys coming in and learning the offense, the defense very quickly, and obviously adjusting to college football. And the schedule's not going to be much different than we normally play. We're still in a very tough, challenging Big South Conference for a couple of years, and but we're looking forward to it. We're looking forward to it. Like I said, football, and we're going to win, and I think we'll actually surprise a few people.
Well, I know your fans are starved for victories, and they're starved for teams competing for some type of a championship. What's the feedback that you're hearing from the man on the street there around Clinton, and when you run into Blue Hose around the state about what you guys are doing?
I think there's obviously some disappointment. I would be, obviously there's some disappointment, but I think there's enough people out there still excited about what's going on here in Clinton and at PC. It wasn't very long, and I've only been back as the head coach for a year, and it wasn't very long ago that you and I talked back in the mid-2000s that we had this thing rolling pretty good, and that's still our goal, to get this thing up and going. Now, obviously, we're transitioning into a different league and so forth here in a couple of years, but that's the goal. That's the goal, and it takes some time sometimes. And but I think overall, initially, players, coaches, alums, former players, a little bit disappointed that we dropped scholarship football, but I think overall, I think people are past that now and looking forward to moving ahead. And it is what it is. I mean, I'm just the kind of guy that, so the hand we've got dealt, then we're going to make the best of it. We're going to try to put the best competitive football team out there and try to win football games.
Coach, what's the goal for doing that? Is it to eventually get back to scholarship football and maybe recycle some things? What's the goal of joining the Pioneer League?
I'm not sure, Phil. I'm trying to take, one day at a time, to be honest with you, and just try to build this thing where we are and be realistic where we are right now. And I just want to develop a football team that's going to compete and fight and battle and make PC people proud. But yeah, I would hope that, that in the near future would be something we would think about doing again, of reestablishing scholarship football, moving back to where we are now and so forth. But right now, that's probably several years away. I think we're where we are right now. We're going to have to do the best we can with it. And you know, if I'm not careful, you know, I'm going to be worried about that stuff rather than the now. And the now is the most important thing right now. We open up. You know, we've got 10 games. Three of our opponents: Kennesaw State, Austin P, Wofford in the top 25 in FCS football. So we still got a tough challenge. I think we'll be competitive. I think by saying that, I think we'll have a shot to win or lose every game. We're going to have to show up and play, and we're going to have to prepare the right way. And who knows? I think we'll find some guys in this signing class, believe it or not. And you know, Phil, you've been around long enough. Sometimes those walk-on guys that got overlooked are a little bit more hungry than maybe even some of these scholarship guys coming in, if that makes sense. And I think we'll find some guys that are pretty darn good football players that are going to help us get to where we want to get to.
Sure.
Now, if you're coming into my living room and I'm a high school football player and I love the academics that Presbyterian provides, and I know you sell that, but a grant and aid, a financial aid package, what can you actually offer a kid at a non-scholarship school as far as funds are concerned?
Well, number one, I can sell what I believe in, and I do believe in this coaching staff and this program and this school, and we're going to do things right in this program. I think that's where it needs to start. Now, let's be real. You know, being able to offer a young man a full scholarship compared to maybe some packaged money with academics and some need base and so forth. That's kind of where we are. I think the reason we've signed a good class this year is simply because I think kids like the level that we're continuing to play. We're staying Division I. Okay, for 2 years we're going to be in the Big South, and we'll be an independent year 3, and then we'll eventually be in the Pioneer League. So really, these guys coming in are only going to be, if they play all 4 years, they're going to only be in the Pioneer League 1 year. I think they like the opportunity to get on the field with a possibility to contribute to this program. So, you know, it's been a tough sell, but in a lot of ways, it's been a sell that kids have been open to and families have been open to, because let's be real. I mean, it is still about, you know, quality education. It is still about being in a place that are going to do things right. They're going to demand the right things, going to develop young men into better players, better people, and so forth. So, you know, this staff, I commend our staff. I mean, they've done a great job. We've got right now anywhere around 60 newcomers coming in August, which is exciting, but it's also a little scary, because those are young babies, if you know what I mean, and that aren't very experienced. But like I said, I think we'll find some guys in that group that are going to help our team.
Got about a minute left with you, Coach. Real quick, coming out of spring practice, who established himself as your go-to guy at quarterback? Do you have one going into fall practice?
Well, we lost a good quarterback in Ben Cheek last year, but we've got a veteran 5th-year guy by the name of John Walker out of Southside Christian there in Greenville that's kind of paid his dues and persevered and hung in there. Has had a couple starts, has actually had a couple wins playing quarterback for us. So we feel good about his experience and his maturity. Now, behind that, you know, we're going to have to find some guys to you know, fill in there at quarterback if needed. But I like our running back situation. I like, you know, offensive line. We've lost a few, but I like the core there. Wide receiver, we got Deshaun Davis out of Chapman High School. That's been a really electrifying player for us right there. So, you know, we're gonna have to play better on offense. We're gonna have to score some points. But like I said, Phil, I think on both sides of the ball coming out of the spring, and I'm just, you know, I want people out there to know that, you know, we finished spring ball with 43 players. Now, there's not many Division I college program that can even manufacture a practice, much less put a team on the field. And these guys did a heck of a job. I mean,
Coach, I hate to do this. We got to run to a hard break. We'll be right back. Thanks to Tommy Spangler.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
800-956-7266. It is a very, very busy day for us. Again, if you missed our conversation with Tommy Spangler, we'll put it for you up at SportsTalkSC.com.
You want to thank Coach for joining us. And again, sorry to have to cut him there at the very end. We had the hard break, but understand what he was talking about having to deal with if you were following PC in the spring. I mean, he only had 40, maybe 42 players to work with in the spring. So they were very limited, but you heard him say they signed about 60 people or so. So they'll have a full roster. They'll be young, but they'll have a full group to work with.
We have this for you on Sports Talk SC. You can tweet us at that. Elijah thanks us for giving the Blue Hose some time here, as we've done through all the schools here across the state.
All the what?
All the schools across the state. Pardon me.
Could have sworn I heard something else.
Incorrect. This is from
like
at Trespass7.
Something you sit on,
gentlemen,
or stand on, or something your doctor is interested in.
According to this gentleman who tweets us at Sports Talk SC, he says most of the experts said Virginia Tech football coach Justin Fuente was a better hire than Will Muschamp at South Carolina. What is your opinion as of today? I'll leave that.
That's too soon. Number one, you're talking about a very short amount of time for the two. Fuente has won a division in the ACC. Muschamp has won 9 games and won a bowl game and has elevated South Carolina from where it was when he took over, gotten better each year. Too soon to be able to judge. I think each in his own right has done very well at his respective school. Each continues to recruit well. And it's funny because both are on the opposite end of the spectrum from their background. One's an offensive guy, one's a defensive guy. So I'd say it's too soon to tell, to decide which was the better hire. I would say right now I would give them both
incomplete.
Well, no. I'm going to say based on what they have done right now and where their program is from where they started, I'd have to give them both A's.
Yes.
I mean, they both have done well.
And
19-8 for Fuente, 15-11 for Muschamp.
Now,
Muschamp took over a program. I think it was in more disrepair than Fuente.
Yeah.
Here's the deal,
and both replaced Hall of Fame coaches.
Yes.
And one
for different circumstances.
Yeah, and one left with the program in the crapper, and the other left with the program slipping. Based on their standards, talking about Beamer.
Right.
But, he stepped into a much better situation in terms of where the program was.
Here's the deal. It's a good question because it also lends you to think about who's the right fit. Now, some of the national pundits thought that South Carolina missed on Fuente. They didn't want him. So they were looking for a fit.
I like the fit that they picked.
The thing about now, Fuente was a great offensive mind. TCU, in fact, Dabo almost hired him, didn't it? It was Chad Morris and Fuente for offensive coordinator.
Interviewed
at Clemson. Wonder if Fuente could have gotten Deshaun Watson to come out of Georgia. Just something to think about. But the guy's a great coach, and he's level-headed. He reminds me a lot of Beamer. So the personality fit Virginia Tech.
Well, keep in mind now, Ray Tanner went offensive first in his hire and trying to get Tom Herman. And sometimes the way things work out, what you don't get initially and what you end up with might turn out to be better. But I couldn't see Tom Herman coming to South Carolina and doing what Will Muschamp is doing in terms of blowing up the program
plus
and starting over and building it from the ground up with the type of dedication, recruiting effort that Muschamp and the buy-in. The thing that impresses me about Muschamp is the buy-in that he has had to Columbia and to South Carolina, because I think he has fully immersed himself in building a program, a long-lasting program at South Carolina.
Plus, what I know about Tom Herman, he really wanted that Texas job. And you would have always had him have to answer that question. Those are not questions you're asking about Will Muschamp.
Here's the deal that South Carolina gets in a Muschamp. Even if he had not coached one down, this guy was born and bred in SEC country.
Right.
You don't have to tell him what the SEC is about. He's been at Florida, LSU, Auburn, he knows where all the trap doors are and how people have recruited years ago against South Carolina. He nobody else could have pulled that off. And then he put together a staff that had almost over 100 years of experience coaching in the SEC. And you could not have made a better hire as far as a coach's knowledge of a conference and to put together the staff he did in the short amount of time that he had.
The folks at Athlon have released their preseason All-America teams. Among those on the list, Clemson has first-teamers offensive lineman Mitch Hyatt, defensive lineman Christian Wilkins, and also Cleveland Farrell. On the third team, defensive lineman Dexter Lawrence and defensive lineman Austin Bryant on the fourth team there for that.
Oh, whoa. Say it again?
What's that?
Where was Trevor Lawrence? I mean, where was Dexter Lawrence?
On the third team.
This is the All-America
team.
Oh, okay.
I know. It seems odd, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, go ahead.
Well, it has Austin Bryant on the fourth team. Yeah. What? It's not me. Don't kill the messenger now.
I would have had, seeing Clemson so much, I probably would have had both tackles on the first team.
Exactly.
But if you're going to drop him one,
I guess you
drop
don't
him
wanna,
two.
I guess you don't want to have too many from the same school dominating a position, but it is, if the guy is, if the guy is worthy of it, give him the spot.
Nick Bosa, Jeffrey Simmons, Chase Winovich, Rashawn Gary, Sutton Smith of NIU, among those who were named ahead of Northern Illinois. Yeah, Ed Oliver of Houston also.
So you take it. I mean, I know individual players stand out on their own talents, but a guy from Northern Illinois would be taken ahead of Dexter Lawrence.
Don't give me this.
Of course, we're provincial. We're provincial. I give you that. We're provincial here, and you tend to lean towards the people that you see and know and recognize.
Deebo Samuel also on the list. He was named a second-team All-American as a wide receiver and a kick returner, but that was not the one that I balked with. I balked at this one.
16 yards, second 26 on the 41, they say. Tunga Vailoa going downfield. He's got a man open. Oh, my God. Touchdown. Alabama has won it. We just lost him in the secondary. Too deep. Got behind our quarterback. And the Crimson Tide. Sweet jubilation for them as the Dogs are heartbroken.
It's for you, Bulldog Bert. IMG Sports Network with the courtesy.
When you go between the hedges, watch it back.
Hey, he's got Georgia this year.
They're coming here.
They're coming here this year.
Coming here. I don't have to deal with that nonsense.
Based on one half of collegiate football. One half of collegiate football is named the second-team All-American behind Will Grier. Now, is that an indictment of the quarterbacking this year, or is it just the hype train continuing to roll off of its course?
I think Jalen Hurts canceled his subscription to Athlon when that came out. I mean, has Alabama settled on their starting quarterback yet?
No.
So, I mean, we still have competition.
Tua was hurt during the spring.
Alabama and Clemson, their quarterback situations are going to be extremely intriguing. Next year, South Carolina's quarterback situation is going to be intriguing when Ryan Helinski gets here, because you've got a guy who has built up a huge following on Twitter. I mean, you got Gamecock fans treating this guy like he can walk on water and cure cancer. He's the answer to all their dreams, all their prayers, if you follow their responses to him on Twitter, which I think mostly are juvenile. But anyway, I have to read them and stomach them. But
that's bad.
When he gets here, and you're going to have to carry on Joyner, I'm assuming, still at quarterback, and you're going to have a senior probably in Jake Bentley, who should be coming off, and he better be coming off a great year this year. There's no reason why he shouldn't.
If he's coming off a great year, he may decide not to play that senior year.
Well, I'm saying, I'm assuming that he's here. You could have a very interesting, dicey quarterback situation in Columbia.
Gentlemen, that was a very good June radio show. Very good.
Well, we'll let the listeners be the judge of that.
I thought it was very good. I enjoyed it. I hope you did as well at home. We'll try to do the same for you tomorrow as we continue here on Sports Talk. We'll talk to Dan Rudakovich, Clemson Athletic Director, tomorrow. We'll hear his end-of-season wrap-up from what happened over the Clemson athletic season. We'll continue to talk more about the upcoming football season. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, for Will and Phil and Tommy. See ya.